Hey everybody, Graven29 here. I've had a request to go over my 5D chess cup match with Dreamer, one of the top players on the 5D chess Discord, and I imagine one of the top players in the world at 5D chess at this time. We played Reverse Royalty, one game, and I got the black pieces. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go in here. I'm going to press U because I had the black pieces. We're going to look at this from my point of view in the match. So I'd say it started with the most typical opening, which is Knight C3, Knight C6. Now, if you're not familiar with Reverse Royalty, this is a queen and is also the piece that gets captured for mate. So it's the queen and the king in regular chess, and this moves like a king but has no value beyond that. So it doesn't matter if you lose this piece or not. It's called a common king. Which I love the name of that, common king. Anyway, so this was our opening sequence. Knight C3, Knight C6. And he followed that up with E4. Now the diagonals, which are usually very important in 5D chess, are a little less important in Reverse Royalty, because in order to get the mate on this piece, I would need to get a queen out here, and obviously I can't put my queen/king in jeopardy. So this is a less important concept in Reverse Royalty. I considered immediately playing F5, excuse me. I considered immediately playing F5, but decided this is a move that I'm going to want to play anyway, so why not play it now? Okay. And Dreamer followed it up with this bishop move. This is a typical 5D setup, knight, bishop. In many ways, the attack is right here, even if it doesn't look like there's any attack here. That is oftentimes going to be all that matters in this game, is what you can do down this file. But I wanted to challenge in the center. I wanted to possibly develop my bishop to an interesting square if he captured, which I didn't expect he would. And Dreamer followed that up with this. Now, I could have kept this here, kept this tension going, but I had an idea. I thought, well, he can't take back this way and give me this check, even though it doesn't look like it's doing anything. There's no way he wants to bring his queen out to here. So what I'm saying is if he had recaptured this pawn with the pawn, then I would just give him a check here with my bishop. Which wouldn't 100% force a recapture. He could block, which I think he would, or he could block, which I think he would, or block. He could block any number of ways, which I think he would, but I don't think that he would want to allow me to give that check in the first place. It would give me a little bit of an attack, and there'd be no reason for it. So he did what I expected, and that is to recapture. Now my idea was not to immediately push this pawn winning a piece by a fork, because in 5D chess it would be a really bad idea to take either one of these pieces with this D pawn opening the D file completely on my side and allowing him to push a pawn at some point and mate me with his queen. because that's how it would work. So my idea wasn't to immediately recapture here. My idea was actually to develop and attack that knight. And again, I don't think he'd want to just let me capture this knight. Um, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, but he didn't. His response was to play off to the side like this. And actually, this was an interesting point in the game. So with this move, he pretty much forced my bishop off. But since my bishop hadn't developed yet, I didn't think forcing my bishop off was terrible. I don't think that he would want to come in and trade his knight or his bishop for my common king, although in many cases that would be a fair trade, but only if my common king was, say, well developed and centrally placed. So he's double attacking this square here, which I'm only defending once. I could defend it again. He kicked me. I could defend it again like this, but that would open up my f7 square for a fork of my queen and my rook, which I'm not just going to give a rook up for free. That would be a bad idea. So in any event, I don't really have a way to prevent him from getting here. And so instead, I thought the best trade for me at this point would be to trade my bishop for this knight. If he was allowed to put his, say, bishop here, I think that would be better for him. And end up with a knight here if I took. So I forced the trade right away, and I don't blame him, because I believe he's probably better here. I've already somewhat lost the opening at this point. He's got this, this idea here. He's going to end up with the bishop deep in my territory, and he hasn't sacrificed any queen safety, anything else. And now the other bad thing is typically the bishop is stronger than the knight. But I'm going to lose a bishop here either way. I'm going to lose this bishop, or I'm going to lose this bishop. If he wants. But if I don't take, then I have to move my queen. And that's not something I was willing to do at this point. I think if I move my queen up, that's just eventually going to be the end of the game. He can even just come back here and check me again and force me to take this way. Well, maybe not force me. Force me is a little strong, but I can't let him sit his knight here and actually unattack it by putting my queen here, because then I can never take it, even though I'm attacking it twice. If I'm leading with my queen king, then that's basically unassailable. So there's no way I can let it sit there. I have to take it. He recaptures, and I immediately activate my common king. So this isn't really dangerous with the bishop. I don't think there's much going on here. I think he has no desire to trade this bishop for this king. So basically, I'm attacking his bishop and forcing him to move. Now, if he could take this bishop and force my queen to recapture, maybe he would do that. But my knight's holding my king as well, so I would just recapture this way if he did take. I didn't think he would. This isn't really something that he would want to do. So I played this to activate my common king, and now I have 3 pieces activated versus his 1. So although I don't love my position and my dark squares are completely my dark squared pawns are all completely hampering my dark squared bishop, and I'm not really enjoying where my pieces are sitting right now. Activating my common king with a tempo on this bishop is a good idea. He dropped his bishop all the way back. Okay. Now, as I just said, my pawns are all on dark squares and they're all blocking this bishop. So I had the idea that we're going to gain a square for the bishop while possibly thinking about in the future, after a pawn push and a pawn push, harassing this bishop some more. So that was my idea here, to activate another piece. Now this is a good move. This is a good move. So he plays his knight out. So since his bishop was here and his pawn is here, this is where the knight had to go if the knight was going to come out now. I think this is probably the right piece to develop for a number of reasons. It immediately develops the piece where, say, pushing this pawn or this pawn still doesn't develop this bishop. It just opens up development for these pieces. Or, say, sliding the rook over, or pushing a rook pawn, which I don't think are good moves. So I think this is the right choice. It also attacks this square, which will become somewhat important later. And I went forward with my idea. Although, in retrospect, I think this might have been a better move. Before attacking the bishop, reducing the squares. But that would have given him time, if he wanted to push here. And although I think that this would have had a number of benefits to play this right away. I think that was a mistake on my part, actually. I think this is maybe the best move in this position, but I didn't play it. I just said, let's keep attacking this bishop. It's moved like 7 times already. I'm going to grab some space on the king side, which is sort of like the queen side. When you think about which piece is the piece that needs protection. So this little fortress here is strong, and I can use these pawns to grab space and attack while not putting my queen in any sort of danger. But my choice here allowed this as a response, which maybe this should have been the square that he went to initially, but he didn't. Although if he had, then I could have pushed here right away and attacked him again and developed my bishop that way. But either way, he went here, and now I played this move. But you see, the difference is if I had played this move first, it would have taken this square away from the bishop, so that I could have played this move, further hampering the bishop, and forcing him to maybe go here and end up back here, which would have been like 8 moves for the bishop and back to the initial square, which would have been really almost like a small victory for me. But either way, I now open this up for the bishop as well, in case I want to come out either way. Now there are squares available to the bishop. This square is available to the knight, and I do weaken my queen. So although there's no pieces attacking yet, I'm aware that moving this pawn opens my queen up diagonally. At this time, he retreated the bishop to d3, which I thought he would. You know, his his idea here is to continue moving this bishop and keeping it on the board. I think this bishop is his strongest piece. If he was to just say, move it here and let me trade it off for a knight, then he would have this knight as his only developed piece, and I would be able to say, slide my bishop here, and I'd be way ahead in development. So he can't just allow me to do that. Now was a somewhat critical moment in the game. So I had to consider here with the knight, here with the knight, or develop a piece. The advantages of going here with the knight are when he moves his bishop away again, it would allow me to say, take this pawn. Now, he might say, you giving up a knight for a pawn, it's not very strong. It might not be strong. You know, I haven't thoroughly thought this through, but one of the reasons I would go here is because this bishop is the only defender of this pawn besides this queen. So taking this pawn forces this queen to recapture. I use words like force. It's not forced, but it's forced. The reason I ultimately decided on this move was because now I was limiting this square for the bishop. So plus I had a tactical idea at this point, which of course Dreamer, being a great player, he saw right through my tactical idea, but I did have a tactical idea. So let me make the next move here, and then we'll talk about the tactical idea. So I ended playing this knight. This is the only square available to the bishop unless he wants to just stop running and allow me to capture. Yeah, I'm not winning a bishop at any point here. All these ideas were just to take the bishop off the board and reduce his developed piece count. So and while I'm doing it, I'm developing my pieces. That's the idea here. So he goes here, and I continue my development. Now, again, he can take it. He can take this common king right now, and there isn't a thing I can do other than recapture. And it may be that giving this bishop up for this common king is right or wrong. I didn't consider anything about that. All I thought was, I'm going to keep harassing this bishop. And now he drops it back here. And now I had a choice. So one thing I could do is continue my assault on his bishop and play here. I definitely thought about it. I'm not even kidding. I thought about doing this. Just keep going. Don't stop. Keep attacking this bishop. But this would have been the last move. He would have gone here and maybe pushed this pawn here. And maybe I should have. Now that I look at it, maybe I should have. Because when I come out of this whole thing, I'm in a really bad position. Amazingly enough, all this chasing of this bishop, all this development, all this space grabbing is going to come back and bite me in the end. Maybe I shouldn't have stopped here. Maybe I should have done this move. But I didn't. I got a tactical idea. So the tactical idea I came up with was, if I can return to this board, now that I've pulled the bishop off of this diagonal right here, If I could have returned to this board in this position without anything else changing in the future, then I would win. Or at least I would soft mate my opponent. So the idea was, if I go here, then the following move, I jump this knight back to this square with a time check on the queen that's going to be sitting on this board. That would force it. It would force my opponent to deal with this idea. So moving my knight here forces my opponent to deal with this idea that I'm getting ready to get a time check. And maybe he would be forced to time travel as a response to my time check. But he calmly plays this pawn push. And this pawn push did way more than I thought it did. So the first thing it does is it defends this idea. Okay. Oh, forgot. Oh, and I forgot to turn that off in this game too, which will come into play later. But pushing the pawn allows it to recapture this knight here. So there's no time mate. I do say remove this pawn from this file, which opens this queen to my queen with a properly timed push of a pawn, but I don't have a check, or I couldn't find a check that would prevent him from playing this on the following move, covering his queen forever. Or even this at the right time, this knight here at the right time, or oh no, this wouldn't do it. So this knight here at the right time. I didn't have a way basically to end the game once I forced this pawn over here. So, or at least I didn't see it. I think I was on about 13 minutes to his 13-ish minutes at this point left on our clocks. We both used a reasonable amount of time on some of these moves. But now I did a big time sink because I really wanted to find a way to make this work. This is a game-changing moment, and if I can open his queen up and somehow get in there and attack and force, and if I could even force him to time travel, I would do it, just because of the complexity of the game of forcing your opponent to travel in a response to your travel, things like that. That's something that is like maybe worth it, because if I can say force him to travel and he has an open D file and my queen is safe on all three travel boards, then that's something that I would be willing to go for. But if I can't force him to travel, and the best I can do is say win a piece back, well, I've sacked a piece and my timeline advantage, and that's just not worth it. So I spent about 7 minutes on this move, and in the end, when I said, well, I'm not going to do the travel, then I didn't spend enough time on the move that I was going to do. So this is a mistake, I think, that transfers over from regular chess to this game, is that you get so focused on one line, you're looking at the one line, and you're trying to make it work, but if you don't and you can't figure it out, and then you have to go to your backup. You don't spend any time on your backup, and you choose the wrong move. So here, I didn't properly consider my next move. And I played this. You remember we talked earlier, I talked earlier about developing my pieces and whatever. I didn't think about defense and what his attack was, because I was thinking so much about my attack and wanting to continue my attack and developing my pieces and whatever. But his response immediately put the question to where I put this bishop. So, had I moved this bishop here, where I should have moved it, I would have left this square available for this rook to defend this pawn. But since I chose this square for the bishop, I couldn't defend this pawn with this rook from here. When he moved his knight here, there was only one square I could defend this pawn from. And I really needed to defend this pawn. I could move the queen over. I always consider moving the queen a concession. In retrospect, it may have been the right move. At this point with this board, it may have been the right move. But I defended the pawn from the side. But now, what I didn't fully understand was that this pawn here would become pinned, and I'm now having to lose at least a pawn at this point. The reason being, this rook is defending this pawn. This pawn is way more important, way more valuable than, say, this pawn. This pawn here comes with check from a knight on a back rank that the rook is no longer defending. I mean, there are just so many things happening if this pawn falls. Plus, this square for the rook isn't a big deal yet. So I made what I consider the best move in a bad position that I put myself in, and I played here. Now, this isn't really defending anything, because like we said, this rook is actually holding this pawn, and there's a fork here anyway. So let's say everything comes off, he takes, and I take, and he takes, and I take, and he takes with check, and I move my queen, and this is falling anyway. So I'm not defending anything here. I'm finding a safe square for the rook and giving up one pawn, and if he wants it, 2 pawns. So my opponent did decide to take this pawn, which is absolutely just winning at this point. I mean, he's just winning this game. And then I made bad things worse, okay? Because I saw a whole bunch of pieces coming off. I saw pawn pushes threatening pieces that were holding each other. I saw all sorts of things here. None of them good. And my pieces are all misplaced. Perhaps I should have. Perhaps I should have. I don't know what I could do here, to be honest. Um, I mean, I could recapture. So I could recapture. He recaptures and I recapture with my queen. But there's no way that I'm not getting mated at some point doing that. There's no way. Even if it's not obvious, even if it's not, one move away, it's just not possible that I'm not losing. So there's just no way that I'm recapturing. What I thought I'd do is I thought I'd kick this bishop. They're defending this square twice. I'm defending it once. So I push this pawn with the intention of pushing this pawn. But his attack is just too fast. I'm too slow now at this point. So here come the pawns. Now this knight is the only defender of this common king, but this knight is under attack. So options, move the king up. Maybe that's the right play here. In fact, that has to be the right play, right? Abandoning the common king cannot be the right play here. Although this abandoning of the common king idea and opening of this file here eventually proves to be what saves the game for me. In this moment, at this time, if there was an engine, it would probably say, move this king up. Because you're going to lose this, but you're going to get this. And that's a trade that at least gets you something out of it. Where this is what I did, and this is just losing a piece with check. Now, it wouldn't have been necessarily easy for him to proceed here. This isn't clear cut. But I think he makes the right decisions. I think this has to be right. So trade everything off. Trade everything off and force my queen onto the open file. This has to be just flat out winning. And there's no doubt in my mind that I'm losing at this point. And I'm down to like 3 minutes, and I think he had like 7, maybe even more than that. He's got me crushed on the clock. I'm crushed in the position. He just has to find the ideas, and it's over. So the clock begins at this moment. Up until this time, there was no exposed queen king. Now I have an exposed queen king on a white board. So this begins the countdown. Immediately, this is under attack from a piece in the future. Which means after he plays this move, this square is under attack from a piece in the future. That's just how the time attacks work. So I immediately cover this square. Phew. I have no queen exposed on this file in the future now. So I've reset all the timers. I'm not in any jeopardy of losing to a piece down here in a couple moves. I'm covered. Obviously, I'm losing. He has an extra one of these. He's got a bishop. He's got 3 pawns. 2 of them are passed and connected. I've got nothing. This common king here is double attacked. Okay, so now, that is something that he has to deal with. But I want you to look at this board, because now that I've defended myself on his attacks, this board could be a board I want to think about in the future. I've got a knight, okay, sitting here. If I can somehow take this piece on this board from the future, that's something that I want to keep in the back of my mind. Obviously, the only piece that can capture that piece is this rook. And I'm already thinking about it. As soon as he moves this common king, I'm already thinking about this board. Because if I could get this board with this rook, the rook would be held by this queen king, and my knight is threatening to do a lot of damage as well. So then, once he moves this, now it's exposed because it's empty. This is something I can't do right away. If I do it too soon, then it catches up to the present and it has no effect. It has no value. So it's just an idea. And it's the only idea I had, because otherwise I'm just losing. I want to get my queen the heck off this. I want to double up my rooks. I want to get my knight involved. And I want to stay out of mate. That's where my headspace is right now. And I'm down to less than 2 minutes at this point. So I do indeed double my rooks. Obviously now I have a triple battery here, but the order of the battery matters. If I say slammed a rook down here and he recaptures, or he captures, I can't then slam down my queen there, because he could just take my queen and that's game over. Even though it's held by a rook, he can obviously capture my queen and win the game before I capture his and win the game. So this is no threat at all right now. He develops his bishop. And I do this. My main idea here is this square. I have a lot of pieces hitting this square. So I can sink my rook here. I can... If this pawn was pushed at some point, then I could protect my passer if I got a pawn here. Not that that would do anything, but these are the ideas that I was having. And then he played what I thought was an interesting move. He took my knight. Earlier in the game, I would have thought he would take that. But at this point, I thought he wouldn't. I was wrong. He took it. It was a good move. Took away my attacker here. Now I'm even if I go here, it's not nearly as strong. Still going to do it if it comes up. So now I actually played this move. I didn't submit it. I'm down to like less than a minute. I played this move with the idea of going back here and taking here with that rook, like we said earlier. But this wouldn't work, and it's my only chance to play it. As soon as I played it there and it doesn't work, that whole idea is gone. Because now there's a piece sitting on there sometime in the past, and there's nothing I can do about it. So I played to here. And I also looked at this point, what would happen if I went back in time on that square? And we could go a long way back on that square because nothing was ever there. Nothing was ever on that square. So that was interesting. But the key is that I'm not going to be able to do that anyway. Because this pawn push comes with check, which is what I saw when I decided not to play here. And I played to here instead. Move out of the way. Now, if my opponent just played bishop takes, this would kill all the ideas that I was just talking about. It would eliminate all the ideas I was mentioning. And in fact, I think bishop takes might be the right move here. Because it would eliminate this battery along this file. But I don't think my opponent saw my idea. And passed pawns are meant to be pushed, especially when they're connected passers. This looks very bad for me. But now I can play to here. He has no checks available. That's a lie. Wow. I missed his idea. See, I didn't even see his idea until this moment. All he had to do, oh my goodness, I feel bad now. I thought I was good here. I wasn't. Do you see why? Because now he could just play this. He could have just played this. Oh my goodness. That's just devastating for me, I think. That's just devastating. Ugh. Wow. Well, I got lucky. He was too focused on this. I think if he would have saw my idea, he would have for sure given that check. I think if he would have saw my idea, he would have for sure given that check. Because I played this almost immediately and then waited like 15 seconds while the animation played out, because I always forget to turn off the animation, except when I'm making a video. I always forget to turn off the animation. And I played this pretty quickly because this was my idea all along. And I think it's a pretty strong idea. So, part one, obviously, this check. Really bad for my opponent because it's a 2D checkmate, which means he immediately has to travel. So this is a winning. It's a winning concept if you can travel back in time, force your opponent to immediately travel. That's a good reason to travel sometimes. And when you're losing, and things are really down to the, just the royalty piece and say a couple other pieces, and your opponent just has an overwhelming advantage, is you can go back in time, force them to travel, anything like that. You do it. Basically, you do it because you don't have anything going on this game here, on this board here. This board is crushed. Whereas, say, traveling, making them travel, getting things interesting, having pieces that can attack other queens, having all kinds of inner board multi-time travel concepts happening. Now that's got to be an improvement over what sits in the future. So this is a snap move by me. It's not even. There's nothing to think about. Although, like I said, my opponent should have stopped me from doing this, and I think my opponent would have stopped me if he saw this. And to be honest, I thought he would see. I thought he knew this was coming because I played this earlier and then took it off the board. In any event, he stops the 2D checkmate idea, and I get my attack moving. This is quite dangerous for him. That if I go here and give him a check, and he takes this way, and then I take here with check, that forces the queen here or to travel, and things are getting iffy. I can do a lot of different things in that position. I can also, instead of recapturing, he takes back here. I can go here with check and force the queen up, and then I could put a rook in between the king, the knight, and the queen, which would actually be two pieces checking the queen, and one of them checking the queen in the past. So yeah, things are dangerous here for him at this moment. Obviously, he sees it, but that doesn't alleviate his dangers. I'm in desperado mode. I'm taking it off. I'm giving a check. I'm moving forward. Submit. I think this was the wrong square to go to. I think this was a mistake again. I think he chose this square because my knight takes a long time to get to this square. But in reality, it doesn't. So now I'm threatening two pieces on this pawn. I don't know if he has anything better at this point than to do that. I'd have to go back and look, but it allows this, which, remember, this queen has been sitting here since here, so this move is attacking it. So now this board is off limits. He can't touch this board. This is his only board. He only has one time travel available to him at all. This doesn't defend this square. This isn't defending this square. But it doesn't matter, because as soon as I put him in check on this board, now he has no more time travels available, and this time mate is unstoppable. Even though this piece here can be taken 3 different ways, in reality it can only be taken one way, this way, but it doesn't stop this. The truth is I got extremely lucky in this game, that he missed what my idea was multiple times. He missed moves at the end here. He chose the wrong square for his queen. He didn't have any pieces that could attack here anyway, so he didn't have any way to defend this square once he chose a square for the queen. And that was decisive. But Dreamer's a great player. One of the reasons I think this happened is because even though he had the massive time advantage when things were getting bad here, when he played this time travel, which I think was his only move, because the bishop couldn't go back far enough because it was blocked on all sides, and the rooks never moved. So this queen jump is the only move available to him, which is also fortunate for me because there was no way for him to respond to this. But he was completely winning. This was completely winning. His position was dominating. And if he had given me that check with the rook, I would have been dead. I would have had no ideas left. Maybe he didn't give me the check with the... Well, yeah, I don't know. Check with the rook, game over, I think. But he got himself in some time trouble as well. And it's pretty typical of games that go on this long. This is a long 5D game. A really long one. A lot of times there's mates that are just unavoidable way earlier. Never give up when you're playing this game. Always keep a favorable board in mind from the past. And when your opponent doesn't find the right move, punish your opponent. I'm not even sure. So I honestly, I don't think this is completely won, because all he has to do is get back to the future. Get back to the future. It sounds funny, but it's true. All he has to do is get back to this board. Well, it was this board. And I think it's over. My attack had to be fast. So, and for that reason, we're extremely lucky that it didn't work here when I initially thought to do it. Because had I, say, moved this rook to here and traveled from this board back to this board and played all these moves that we played, then by the time we got to here, this board would have been here. And say defenses like this bishop holding this square, and even this bishop holding, well, this bishop holding this square. I gotta be precise here, but this square wouldn't have been available to me because this bishop would have been holding it. So we, in a sense, we got lucky that we saw his idea, but then we got lucky when he didn't play his other idea. So, because this board was one board too late, right? This is where the future was sitting when we played knight takes. Had the future been sitting here, this pawn could have recaptured this knight like we discussed earlier. But luckily, this all fell out just in the nick of time for us to get a time check where this board wasn't defending this board. And instead of being able to, say, just play a little capture across time, he was forced to play a queen jump that didn't save him. I want to thank everybody for watching. Definitely join the Discord community. Definitely play this game if you don't. It's an amazing game. We have an amazing community. We're doing tournaments. We're doing league. We're doing cups. It's a lot of fun. Thanks for watching. Signing off.